Good morning everyone, and how are you doing? I don't know if you've noticed, but I kind of haven't been around on YouTube for a little bit, and now there's a valid reason to why that's happened. So the valid reason why I haven't been around recently is because I have been heading for the light at the end of the tunnel and just trying so hard to finish my costumes for the World of Wearable Art Awards. Now, WOW, as some might call it, the way I like to describe it is the Costume Olympics. Now, it's this really amazing competition that happens in New Zealand every year, and I first heard about it when I started uni in the UK, but ever since then I've been hooked. And every year I do this competition because even if I've never gotten into the competition, I've been pre-selected once, I still use it as a way to learn a new technique, be creative, explore a new world, explore a strange image that I saw and see where that takes me down the rabbit hole. And I call it my retraining every year. So January, February, I do a new project, and that is just so fun because I've done such a collection and array of things. So I think my portfolio looks really cool, and I would like to share some of that with you today, so you can also maybe be inspired to enter into the competition next year, because the competition is closed for this year, and I really do hope I get in, because this costume has been technically a year in the making, because clearly the competition got cancelled last year because of COVID. So I've had a year to really find all the fabrics that I wanted perfectly, spend a lot of time doing it, because if I'd done the competition last year, it would have been a rush job because I was working at the same time. So because I've not been able to work because of lockdown, I've been able to just focus on it. And honestly, I couldn't believe how long this costume took to make, because I did 2 costumes. It's period, and the amount of sewing that I did to myself, but it's totally worth it. So hopefully you'll see that design soon, but not too soon, because we want it to be in the competition. So let's get straight into some of the creations I have made. So the first costume I ever made was for my end of year project for my 3rd year at uni, and I was so inspired by this new technology being created. Now, it's really old school now, the young people say, but it was for LED lights. The amount of LED lighting in costumes, fiber optic fabric, EL wire, you saw Tron, there was a company called Cute Circuit that was a huge inspiration. And the thing that really set me off was Katy Perry's Met Gala costume, because that was just, it was so beautiful. And then when Florence and the Machine also did a video clip with LED lighting in it, I was like, yep, that's it. And I had to do it. So how am I going to make this costume really interesting? I thought, okay. So I thought about it. Jellyfish. Jellyfish are natural LED lights. When they move, they glow, and they're just all array of different colors, and they're transparent, and they have, I don't know, it was so inspiring to me. So I was able to create all these different shapes and textiles, and just really steer into the skit of doing textiles, LED lights, and making this creation that is just under the sea. So the way I did, I found these fiber optic LED lights, and I moved them on the shoulder to show she was a toxic creature. So I had metal spikes and crystals sticking out of the shoulder piece, so the crystals could project the light a bit more. And then we made it the heart was here, and then I did such an array of different purples, and I did majority of the LED lights there, so it could be spreading out. And then we have LED lights all over this hoop I created, and that hoop was just an interesting experience to make a hoop that has to be round at a crin and metal and steel boning. That was so hard to do, but it was so worth it. A couple of years later, I was working at the V&A during a costume exhibit. I was working for a designer, and she organized an innovative costume tunnel to have all these amazing costumes made, and displayed, and she said, I want your costume in the exhibit for the night, because it was just a Friday night late at the V&A. But then I can actually say, because I completely forgot about it until now, my costume has been displayed at the V&A. Technically that's like, why did I forget this? That's so cool. And then the following year I created something that was inspired by John Galliano's Origami fashion range for Dior. And I decided to kind of mix cultures, because that's what I really love as a costumer. I love discovering a culture and mixing it with another culture or history and just merging it all together. So I created an origami Victorian bustle lady, and I think it's kind of perfect, because if you have a bustle you want it to be ornate and over decorated, so having all this beautiful origami, it's just stunning. And the fact that I was able to create origami using fabric, wire, I've used also like you know the plastic you use for quilting patterns? I did that to create some of the shapes, and that was kind of my first bustle. So again, I taught myself fabric origami and I learned how to make a bustle, and that was really fantastic. So I'm quite proud of that. I think that's my mum's favorite costume out of all the things I've done for WOW. And then I decided to explore a bit more, because once they open up the sections, you don't know what the different sections are going to be. It might be a bra section, it might be a cultural section, or it could just be open. And then they proceeded to do a wetter workshop section, which meant they were wanting people to delve into costume and film, which I was all for. So they set a different criteria every year. And then in the following year they had a really cool one, which was the Kingdoms of the East. Now, I've said I love different cultures. I created a warrior lady who had Chinese, Balinese, what else fabrics did I use? Japanese. I wanted to create an Asian warrior, awesome woman. And I wanted to say she was a woman that traveled all over the East and picked up different cultures, and she protected that person from that country. And I just created this really cool, I think it's a really cool thing, using all these different pieces that I found and was inspired, and creating all these different shapes that they used in the East for their costumes. And then I was able to make some really cool gauntlets, or as I like to professionally call them, wristocuffs. And I'm really proud of that one. I definitely need to wear it to archery one day and see if she can be a real warrior princess. Sorry about using warrior princess, it's New Zealand, you have to put the two together. And then I can use my Mongolian bow down archery, just being really cool, and my colleagues judging me, but I love it. As well that year, I also did the New Zealand sort of section, where you take inspiration from the land, the people, and create something for that. And I was really inspired by the nature and landscape of New Zealand. So I delved into the mud and the natural springs and the sandy beaches and the coral, and just I put everything together to create unique shapes. The thing that really tied the whole section together for me is, it's a strange thing to say, I think tattoos on women on their face are some of the most beautiful things in the world. Every time I go to Morocco and get henna, I'm doing Berber symbols on my face, because I've never felt more beautiful than with traditional Berber designs on my face. And what the Maori women do with this beautiful shape on their chin, it's just so sexy to me. That sounds so bizarre, but I find it so beautiful. So the whole costume, the base was that for the corset, and then from there it just exploring the different shapes, and then using textiles and silk printing and crin, and how was I going to create these shapes? And the thing that took the longest, but I'm the most proud of, is the little corset wings, because that beading, it was really difficult actually to find those beads, but they look so stunning, and it was worth the at least 70 hours it took to bead that whole thing. But I'm so proud of that costume. I might even wear the corset when I do go to New Zealand. Like, how cool will that shot be? We move into the next year, where I was really inspired by babushkas, which is a Russian doll some people call. and then the folk costume of that area. So I was mixing all these shapes, like, okay, I want to create a babushka, but I want to also use the shape on the woman, but make it very folky. So I was able to get some really beautiful fabric sent from Russia, like that folky headband. Oh! And I looked into the rich textiles of the area to really give that aspect of the Orthodox Church is coming off onto this babushka girl. And I think it turned out really well. But at the same time, I'm looking at now, what, 5-6 years later, and I think it's pretty disappointing. I think I could have done a lot more, maybe, but you know what, that's okay, because we can go back and revisit the design and see what happens, because there is a design there, and it'll be really interesting to go back and redesign that costume and see how can I improve it now that I have more of an understanding of construction and a new way to be able to tackle the design. So that'd be really curious to do a babushka point 2. Now as well that year, I also did another Kiwi design, and I was really inspired by the women yet again. So I was looking into how they made their shawls, what sort of fabrics they would use, like the weave of things. And again, of course, I did the tatouage. So I did it so it was coming up to my neck and it was an extension. And I think out of the 2 costumes that year, this is the one I'm most proud of, because I tried so hard to use organic, natural products. I was trying to really showcase that the Maoris used the land. So I was using feathers, I was using cotton, I was using reed, wooden beads, wools, and using all this like different techniques to weave all these fabrics together, and the feathers. I honestly, like, I just love that costume. It's so beautiful. I definitely have to take that to New Zealand and wear it to maybe Rococo, because that'd be really, really cool. I think, you know what, that's one of my top 3 costumes I've made for this competition. Should I say top 3? Maybe top 5. Top 5. Now, the following year, I did the Weta Workshop competition, and the category was Rococo and Baroque. So if you don't know me very well, I love the 18th century. I must have been part of that world at some point, because the fabrics, the shape, the deliciousness of it, even though, you know, we all know what happened in the end with the French, but it's so beautiful. Now, my inspiration with that category was kind of the stories behind and the theatre, and the way I created it, I started looking into like the history of that period, and then I started seeing how much theatre really inspired people. But when I say inspire, I also mean it was kind of propaganda, wasn't it? It was telling narratives that people wanted to know, and so many beautiful script writers were out there. And I can't remember exactly why I chose to follow this route, but I did a kind of Beauty and the Beast inspired situation. With this piece, I followed the route of Beauty and the Beast and kind of Molière and the imagery of Marie Antoinette walking through Le Petit Trianon and just being in nature, and that kind of steered the ride that way. And I created this beautiful, beautiful shape. But what's so interesting about these massive panniers, we all know the memes and imagery of like women from the 18th century with panniers so big they have to walk sideways through the door. And I thought, oh, that's really interesting. So what I did, I put a working theatre inside the actual skirt. Actually, she sits there because she's so big and stiff that she sits behind the TV, because I have nowhere else to put her. Now, it was a lot of work, this, but it really, really paid off, because you were able to create these shapes coming off the pannier, and I used that crin fabric to give it the structure so it holds still. And so I just, because of all the street performers in that period, creating this theatre, it was kind of like I was taking the propaganda and the stories out to the people as well. And I'm just so proud of that. I think, yeah, maybe this is my favorite costume out of all of them. And then because like I needed puppets for the theatre, I looked into puppetry in that period, and they're all quite like ugly dolls, but I love that. So I created these little puppets that were very oddly looking, but they were fairies that would come, and I could also dangle them off my skirt because I found the most expensive, beautiful fabric. So I was trying to really integrate them together. They were part of this world. and then working with a stomacher for the first time and creating the little sleeves and how I was going to gather the fabric. And again, like, I can completely redo the cozy, I think. And no, I wouldn't redo the cozy, I would redo the bodice, because I think the bodice has a lot of potential to go. I could really kick up the stomacher. So maybe in the future I will redesign the top, but I do love that fabric. It's just so rich and over the top, and that's what the 18th century was to me. It was just this opulent period and so much fabric. You know, using fabric showed your wealth. I'm so proud of that costume. Following year they did another category that was under the microscope, and I investigated into looking at all the coral and, you know, the fine detail and the different shapes, and it was really like so much color and so many different micronisms we didn't know. And I was able to use that like microscopic images to bead this weird and wonderful headpiece, one would say. And I was very inspired by fashion with this instead of costume, so I created a very fashion silhouette, and it was a lot of Alexander McQueen inspired. So through that I learnt more about my skill as a beader, as well as learning how to print fabric, you know, designer fabric. But I'm really happy with this bizarre piece of fabric I created, and using that fabric over the top of it was just beautiful. Now following that, I did something that I've been wanting to do for years. They do a really fantastic category that is the bra section, and I've seen some amazing bras out there. I decided to create some of my favorite things in the world. Now, do you know what some of my favorite flowers are in the world? There's a little hint. I made some gumnut blossom boobs. Things you never thought you would say. And they're just so cute. And I got these little babies, and like, you know, the babies that you have for like baby showers and that you put in cocktails that I've seen people do. And I decorated them like little ragged blossom, and I got some of my old like bits and bobs that I had from my uni project where I made little ragged blossom. And it's just so cute, and I really love that, because I think May Gibbs would be flattered but horrified that her creatures and characters have been made into a boob fiasco. And that leads us up until this year, where I have created something really spectacular, I feel. I have never done Elizabethan before, and I'm really thankful that I had help and advice from a colleague who had just worked on an Elizabethan piece, and she was able to really help me follow through. And I also was inspired by one of my favorite books, but I can't say any more until I find out if I get in or out of the competition, and depending if things go well, you might be seeing this in a couple of months. So if you are a keen costumer, if you want to create designs that stretch the ultimate limits, finding a unique way to learn a new skill that you never knew you needed, delve into a world that you've always been curious, doing the World of Wearable Art Awards is such a fantastic thing. Each year you are able to just delve into who knows where. You have the choice of so many different sections, and you can just create anything that your heart desires. And that is why I do this every year. I get to unleash this crazy costume ideas, and originally I was doing it because I was working so much in the costume industry that I was actually not able to do my own work, and it was my yearly extreme self-expression. But now, because of this fantastic channel and the last year of having a lot of free time, I've been able to really be reunited with this passion I have for costume. So if you want to delve into something unique and wonderful and learn more about your skill as a seamstress or a designer, or just do something that you've always wanted to do and have it a purpose for the world to see your talent, make sure you enter the World Wearable Art Awards next year. So until next time, I will see you later.